Imagine this. You're at your favorite restaurant. The aroma of sizzling dishes filling the air, the sound of clinking glasses adding rhythm to the atmosphere. The waitstaff moves swiftly, balancing plates with precision. But behind the smiles and polished uniforms, not everything is as it seems. What if one tiny moment of frustration led to an unimaginable twist, one that changes everything? In today's story, we dive into a situation that starts with an ordinary day in a bustling restaurant and unravels into a shocking lesson about choices, consequences, and unexpected surprises. Stay with us until the end because there's a reward in this tale, a reminder that no action, no matter how small, goes unnoticed. It all begins during a packed lunch hour. The restaurant is alive with energy, diners chatting, orders flying to the kitchen, and servers hustling to keep everyone happy. Among them is a waiter, sharp, efficient, but visibly stretched thin by the day's demands. For him, this shift is no different from any other, except for one thing. A customer is about to walk in, one whose presence will turn this seemingly ordinary day into an unforgettable disaster. This isn't just a story about what happens when tempers flare or when mistakes are made. It's about how one impulsive decision can spiral into consequences no one saw coming. So buckle up, because as we uncover what happened next, you might find yourself questioning how far someone can go when they think no one's watching. The restaurant door swings open, and in walks the kind of customer every server dreads, the one who carries an air of entitlement like it's their birthright. His entrance alone demands attention. Sharp look at the host, a complaint about the table offered, and a dismissive wave that sends the staff scrambling to accommodate him. For the waiter, this is just another hurdle in an already overwhelming shift. He watches as the man surveys the room, muttering about the lighting being too dim, the temperature too cold. When he finally settles into a booth, it's with a loud sigh, as if the world itself is inconveniencing him. "Water," he says curtly, barely glancing up. "No ice, and make sure it's filtered. I can tell the difference." The waiter clenches his jaw but forces a polite smile. "Of course, sir, right away." But the requests don't stop there. The menu, according to the customer, is too limited, and he demands substitutions for nearly every dish he considers. Each interaction with the man feels like walking a tightrope, balancing professionalism with the growing frustration bubbling inside. As the waiter brings the water, now precisely prepared, the customer doesn't even acknowledge him. Instead, he points out a smudge on the glass and insists it be replaced. "You'd think a place like this would pay attention to the basics," he mutters, loud enough for others to hear. The staff exchanges glances, silently sympathizing with the waiter, who's clearly bearing the brunt of the man's ire. But little do they know, the waiter's patience is wearing dangerously thin. What happens next will not only shake the restaurant but leave everyone involved questioning their actions. This is the moment where frustration meets a choice that will set the stage for a shocking revelation. Keep watching, because this story is only just beginning. The waiter steps into the kitchen, gripping the smudged glass in one hand and clenching the other into a fist. His colleagues notice the tension in his face. "That guy again?" one of them whispers. He nods, muttering under his breath, "The guy's impossible." But this isn't just another difficult customer. This one has a way of getting under the waiter's skin like no one else before. Every comment, every demand feels personal. The waiter knows he's supposed to let it slide, professionalism and all that, but the constant nitpicking has pushed him to his limit. When the next order comes in, the waiter's irritation boils over. "Filtered water," he mocks under his breath, as if he can even tell the difference. His coworkers chuckle nervously, sensing the tension but not expecting what's about to happen. As he prepares the customer's drink, a simple glass of water, he pauses. The words of the customer echo in his mind. "You'd think a place like this would pay attention to the basics." He glances around to make sure no one's watching. Then, in a moment of pure frustration, he leans over the glass and spits into it. The act is quick, almost reflexive, and as soon as it's done, the waiter feels a rush of emotion, satisfaction mixed with guilt. "That's what you get," he thinks to himself, convincing himself that the customer deserves it. But deep down, there's a nagging voice questioning whether he's just made a huge mistake. Carrying the tray out to the dining area, the waiter masks his emotions with a practiced smile. The customer takes the drink without so much as a thank you, sipping it while continuing his litany of complaints. The waiter, standing at a distance, feels a small sense of victory. But this isn't the end of the story. What feels like a harmless act of revenge is about to spiral into something much bigger, something the waiter never could have anticipated. Because the man sitting at that table isn't just a difficult customer. He's someone who holds the power to turn the waiter's life upside down. Stay with us, because what happens next will leave you questioning how far frustration can push someone and whether the consequences are ever worth it. With the drink delivered, the waiter retreats to the kitchen, a small, bitter grin tugging at the corner of his lips. For the first time that day, he feels a sliver of relief. He tells himself the man deserved it after all. No one should treat people the way that customer has been treating the staff. Out in the dining area, the restaurant buzzes with the usual clatter of plates and cheerful chatter. The difficult customer sits alone, occasionally scribbling in a small notebook between sips of his drink. He glances around the room, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. The waiter keeps an eye on him from behind the counter, half expecting another complaint about the temperature of the water or the angle of the napkin. But to his surprise, the man says nothing. He eats his meal methodically and quietly, jotting notes and nodding to himself every now and then. In the kitchen, the staff begins to relax. Guess he finally ran out of things to complain about. One of the cooks jokes. The waiter chuckles nervously, trying to push the earlier incident out of his mind. It's done, he thinks. Nobody knows, and the guy will leave soon. But as the minutes tick by, the customer's calm demeanor starts to feel unnerving. He doesn't look like someone who's simply enjoying his lunch. He looks like someone observing, evaluating, calculating. The waiter brushes it off, convincing himself it's just paranoia. After all, he's gotten away with it. The customer finishes his drink, dabs his mouth with a napkin, and gestures for the check. The waiter breathes a sigh of relief. One more interaction, and this ordeal will finally be over. Or so he thinks. What no one in the restaurant knows yet is that this customer isn't just any patron. The notebook isn't for doodling or idle thoughts, it's for a report. And the drink he just finished, it's about to become the centerpiece of a much larger issue. This moment of calm is only the eye of the storm. The real chaos is just around the corner. Keep watching, because when the truth comes out, it will leave you speechless. The waiter steps into the kitchen, gripping the smudged glass in one hand and clenching the other into a fist. His colleagues notice the tension in his face. That guy again, one of them whispers. He nods, muttering under his breath, the guy's impossible. But this isn't just another difficult customer. This one has a way of getting under the waiter's skin like no one else before. Every comment, every demand feels personal. The waiter knows he's supposed to let it slide, professionalism and all that, but the constant nitpicking has pushed him to his limit. When the next order comes in, the waiter's irritation boils over. Filtered water, he mocks under his breath, as if he can even tell the difference. His coworkers chuckle nervously, sensing the tension but not expecting what's about to happen. As he prepares the customer's drink, a simple glass of water, he pauses. The words of the customer echo in his mind. You'd think a place like this would pay attention to the basics. He glances around to make sure no one's watching. Then, in a moment of pure frustration, he leans over the glass and spits into it. The act is quick, almost reflexive, and as soon as it's done, the waiter feels a rush of emotion, satisfaction mixed with guilt. That's what you get, he thinks to himself, convincing himself that the customer deserves it. But deep down, there's a nagging voice questioning whether he's just made a huge mistake. Carrying the tray out to the dining area, the waiter masks his emotions with a practiced smile. The customer takes the drink without so much as a thank you, sipping it while continuing his litany of complaints. The waiter, standing at a distance, feels a small sense of victory. But this isn't the end of the story. What feels like a harmless act of revenge is about to spiral into something much bigger, something the waiter never could have anticipated. Because the man sitting at that table isn't just a difficult customer. He's someone who holds the power to turn the waiter's life upside down. Stay with us, because what happens next will leave you questioning how far frustration can push someone and whether the consequences are ever worth it. The customer folds his napkin neatly and places it on the table. He raises his hand, signaling the manager. The waiter, observing from a distance, feels a sudden spike of anxiety. What now? He thinks, assuming another petty complaint is on its way. The manager approaches with a professional smile. I trust everything was satisfactory, sir. The man leans back in his chair, his expression calm but firm. Actually, I'd like to discuss a few concerns, he says, pulling out his notebook. The manager's smile falters slightly, but he nods. Of course, We value all feedback. The waiter edges closer, pretending to tidy up a nearby table. He's curious, but also uneasy. The customer begins to list minor issues: the scuff on the menu, a server who didn't immediately refill his water, and a wobbly chair at another table. Each point is delivered with precision, his tone cold and analytical. The manager listens patiently, apologizing for each detail, but then the man pulls out a badge. "I'm not just here as a customer," he says, his voice suddenly authoritative. "I'm a health inspector, and I've been evaluating your establishment today." The words hit like a thunderclap. The entire restaurant seems to hold its breath. The manager stiffens, his polite demeanor giving way to alarm. The waiter's stomach churns. A health inspector. The revelation feels like a cruel twist of fate. "I've noticed several areas that need improvement," the inspector continues, tapping his pen on the notebook. "And I'll be conducting a full report." The manager stammers, trying to regain composure. "We appreciate your feedback, sir. Please let us know if there's anything we can address immediately." The inspector glances at his empty glass, then back at the manager. "Let's start with the basics," he says, his tone suddenly sharp. "The water you served me tasted ... off. I'd like to know how it was prepared." The waiter freezes. His pulse quickens as the room feels like it's closing in around him. The calm exterior he'd maintained all day is beginning to crack. The inspector leans forward, his piercing gaze sweeping over the staff. "I have a strong suspicion that something unacceptable has occurred," he says, "and I intend to get to the bottom of it. This is no longer a difficult customer's petty complaints. It's an investigation, and the waiter knows the next few minutes could change everything. The question now is whether the truth will come out, and if it does, what the fallout will be." The story is far from over, and the tension is only just beginning. Stick around, because the consequences of one impulsive act are about to unfold in ways no one could have imagined. The inspector's words hang in the air like a ticking clock, each second amplifying the tension in the room. The manager's smile has vanished entirely, replaced by a nervous edge as he gestures toward the kitchen. "Of course, sir, we'd be happy to show you how we prepare everything," he says, his voice trembling slightly. The inspector rises from his seat, notebook in hand, and starts walking toward the kitchen. The staff exchanges worried glances. They've heard stories about inspections leading to heavy fines, or worse, temporary closures. The waiter, standing frozen near the counter, feels a bead of sweat roll down his temple. As the inspector steps into the kitchen, his sharp eyes scan every detail. "Cleanliness is key," he says aloud, jotting down notes. "I've already noticed a few questionable practices." The manager hovers nearby, trying to appease him. "We pride ourselves on maintaining high standards, sir. If there's anything out of place, we'll address it immediately." The inspector pauses near the prep station, his gaze landing on the water pitchers. He picks one up and examines it closely. "Tell me about your water preparation process," he says, his tone direct. The question sends a wave of unease through the room. The waiter's heart pounds in his chest. This is it. He's getting closer. The kitchen staff stumbles over their explanation, detailing the filtration system and cleaning schedule, but the inspector doesn't seem convinced. He turns to the manager. "And how do you ensure staff hygiene during service?" The manager hesitates, his confidence unraveling under the scrutiny. "We have strict protocols in place," he says. "All staff are trained to follow them." The inspector raises an eyebrow. "Interesting," he says, "because the taste of that water suggests otherwise. Something isn't adding up here." The room feels like it's shrinking. The waiter shifts uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. But the inspector isn't done. He looks around, his gaze sharp as a knife. "If there's something I should know about, now's the time to be honest," he says, his voice carrying an air of finality. The tension is palpable. The manager glances at the staff, silently pleading for answers. The waiter feels the walls closing in, the weight of his secret growing heavier by the second. And then, like the crack of thunder, a small voice breaks the silence. I think something might have happened," says one of the junior staff members, nervously fiddling with their apron. All eyes turn to the waiter. His face drains of color as he realizes there's no escaping what's about to happen. The moment of truth is here. The question now is not whether the secret will come out, but how severe the consequences will be. Keep watching, because the fallout is about to explode in ways no one saw coming. The room falls deathly silent, every gaze fixed on the waiter. His heart feels like it's pounding in his throat as the junior staff member stammers, "I'm not sure. But I think there might have been an issue with the drink. The inspector's piercing eyes land on the waiter, who looks like a deer caught in headlights. Is that true? The inspector asks, his tone firm but measured. What exactly happened with my drink? The waiter hesitates, his mind racing. Do I deny it, play dumb, or just come clean? But deep down, he knows there's no point in lying. The inspector's gaze is too sharp, his demeanor too commanding. With a deep breath, the waiter steps forward. Sir, he begins, his voice shaky. I made a mistake. The inspector doesn't interrupt, waiting for him to continue. The silence feels suffocating as the waiter fumbles for words. I was frustrated, he admits. You were difficult, and I wasn't thinking clearly. He pauses, the words catching in his throat. I spat in your drink. Gasps ripple through the room. The manager's face turns ashen, his mouth opening and closing like he's trying to form words but can't. The rest of the staff exchange horrified looks, while the inspector remains eerily calm. You spat in my drink, the inspector repeats, his voice low but cutting like a blade. The waiter nods, his head hanging in shame. I'm so sorry, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. It was unprofessional and completely wrong. I don't know what I was thinking. The inspector closes his notebook with a sharp snap. Do you realize the seriousness of what you've done? He asks, his tone cold and unwavering. This isn't just about poor service or frustration. It's a blatant violation of health and safety standards. You've put this entire establishment at risk. The waiter doesn't respond, his head still bowed. The manager finally finds his voice, stepping forward with a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Sir, I assure you, this is not representative of our standards. This will be dealt with immediately. The inspector holds up a hand, silencing him. I'm not done, he says. Turning back to the waiter, he asks, do you have any idea how much damage this could cause? To the restaurant, to the trust of your customers, to your own career? The waiter can only nod, tears stinging his eyes. He knows there's no defense for what he's done. The inspector straightens his posture, his expression stern. This is going in my report, he says, and the consequences will reflect the gravity of this situation. The weight of those words settles over everyone in the room. The waiter's impulsive act of spite has now escalated into a nightmare not just for him, but for the entire restaurant. But the story isn't over yet. The inspector's report is just the beginning, and the fallout from this moment will ripple far beyond what anyone expected. Stay tuned, because what happens next will redefine the meaning of accountability. The inspector turns to the manager, his tone unwavering. Effective immediately, I'm shutting down this establishment for a full health and safety review, he declares. I'll be filing a detailed report, and you can expect an investigation from the health department within the next 48 hours. The manager's face crumples in despair. Sir, please, he pleads. This is an isolated incident. We've never had a problem like this before. Our reviews, our reputation, everything speaks to the quality we provide. But the inspector shakes his head. Reputation doesn't excuse negligence, he says firmly. One act like this undermines everything you've built. It's your responsibility to ensure every employee understands the standards you claim to uphold. The staff stands in stunned silence. Some look at the waiter with anger, others with pity. He feels their eyes on him, each glance a silent accusation. The weight of his actions crushes him, but there's no undoing what's been done. The inspector continues, his words deliberate and final. I suggest you use this time to reflect on how this happened and how you'll prevent it from happening again. Because trust me, one more violation, and it won't just be a temporary closure. It'll be permanent. The inspector collects his notebook and walks out, leaving the restaurant in a state of stunned silence. The door swinging shut behind him feels like a punctuation mark on a day that's gone horribly wrong. The manager rounds on the waiter, his face a mix of fury and disbelief. Do you have any idea what you've done? He demands, his voice trembling with anger. You've jeopardized all of our jobs, this entire business, because you couldn't control your temper. The waiter opens his mouth to respond, but no words come out. What could he possibly say to make this better? Apologies feel hollow in the face of the chaos he's caused. The other staff members begin murmuring among themselves, the tension in the room thick and suffocating. Some are furious, venting their frustrations aloud, while others remain silent, unsure of how to process what's just happened. The manager finally speaks again, his tone icy. Get out, he says, pointing toward the door, "You're done here. I don't want to see you in this restaurant ever again." The waiter hesitates, looking around the room one last time. He sees the disappointment in his colleague's eyes, the frustration etched on the manager's face. With his head hung low, he takes off his apron, places it on the counter, and walks out without another word. But even as the door closes behind him, the story isn't over. The consequences of his actions will ripple far beyond this one moment, and the fallout for the restaurant is only just beginning. Stay with us, because what happens next will show how one small act of defiance can leave a lasting impact and whether redemption is ever truly possible. The waiter's departure leaves the restaurant in a state of turmoil. The manager gathers the staff for an emergency meeting, his expression grim. This isn't just about one mistake, he begins, pacing back and forth. This is about the trust we've built with our customers and how quickly it can all come crashing down. The staff sits in silence, the weight of the situation sinking in. They know the inspector's report could result in fines, mandatory training sessions, or even worse, a permanent stain on the restaurant's reputation. For a business that thrives on word of mouth and loyal patrons, this could be catastrophic. Word of the incident spreads quickly. Regular customers begin canceling reservations as whispers of the health inspector's shutdown circulate. Online reviews start to take a hit, with speculative comments about cleanliness and professionalism. The once busy restaurant begins to feel eerily empty. For the manager, every phone call and email is a reminder of how fragile their reputation has become. Long-standing partnerships with suppliers and catering clients are now at risk, as the uncertainty of the health department's investigation looms over them. Meanwhile, the rest of the staff grapples with the fallout in their own ways. Some are angry, blaming the waiter for jeopardizing their livelihoods. Others feel a sense of guilt, wondering if they could have done more to prevent the situation. Conversations in the break room are tense, filled with frustration and fear about the future. As the days pass, the health department arrives for a thorough inspection. Clipboards in hand, they comb through every corner of the restaurant, from the kitchen to the dining area. Each small infraction and improperly stored utensil, a smudge on a countertop, is noted with clinical precision. The manager does his best to cooperate, but the tension is palpable. Every time the inspectors exchange a glance or jot something down, his stomach churns. He knows the report will determine whether the restaurant can reopen and whether they'll have a chance to rebuild their reputation. The staff watches anxiously from the sidelines, each of them wondering what their future holds. For some, this job is their primary source of income. For others, it's a stepping stone to bigger dreams. But for all of them, it's now a question of survival. And then there's the former waiter, sitting at home, replaying the incident over and over in his mind. The guilt weighs heavily on him, but so does the fear of what comes next. He knows his actions have left a mark not just on the restaurant, but on himself. The restaurant's fate now hangs in the balance. Will the health department's report be the final nail in the coffin, or will they get a second chance to make things right? Stay tuned, because the story of redemption or ruin is about to unfold. The health department's inspection is thorough and grueling. Every corner of the restaurant is scrutinized, every process questioned. The staff waits in agonizing suspense as the inspectors compile their findings, their stoic expressions giving nothing away. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the lead inspector gathers the manager and staff in the dining area. "We've completed our review," she begins, her voice neutral. "While there are areas that need improvement, I've seen no evidence of systemic issues that would warrant a permanent closure." A collective sigh of relief sweeps through the room. The staff exchanges hopeful glances, and the manager's shoulders visibly relax. But the inspector isn't finished. That said, she continues, her tone firm, "This establishment will remain closed temporarily until these issues are resolved. You'll need to implement new protocols and complete mandatory staff training before reopening." The relief is bittersweet. The restaurant has avoided the worst-case scenario, but the road ahead won't be easy. The manager steps forward, his voice steady despite the lingering tension. "Thank you," he says. "We'll do whatever it takes to meet your standards." With the inspectors gone, the manager calls another meeting with the staff. "This is our chance to turn things around," he says, his tone both determined and encouraging. "We can't change what happened, but we can control what happens next. If we work together, we can rebuild the trust we've lost." the staff begins brainstorming solutions. They discuss everything from updated hygiene practices to customer service workshops. Each person contributes ideas, their initial anger and fear replaced by a sense of shared purpose. Meanwhile, the news of the restaurant's temporary closure spreads further. Some loyal customers express disappointment, but others voice their support, sharing positive memories of their experiences at the restaurant. It's a small but meaningful reminder that not all is lost. The manager takes this as a sign to reach out to the community. He posts an open letter on the restaurant's social media, apologizing for the incident and outlining the steps they're taking to improve. "We made a mistake," the letter reads, "but we're committed to earning back your trust, one meal at a time." The response is mixed. Some people appreciate the honesty, while others remain skeptical. But the manager knows this is just the beginning. Rebuilding trust will take time and effort, but he's determined to see it through. As the team begins implementing changes, they start to feel a renewed sense of purpose. What once seemed like a hopeless situation now feels like an opportunity to grow stronger as a team and as a business. But one question lingers in everyone's mind: what happened to the waiter who started it all? While the restaurant moves forward, his story takes a different path, and it's one that will intertwine with theirs in ways no one expects. Keep watching, because redemption isn't just for the restaurant, it's for everyone involved. And the next chapter is about to show how one mistake can lead to a chance at something greater. Away from the restaurant, the waiter sits alone in his small apartment, staring blankly at the walls. Days have passed since his dismissal, but the shame of what he's done hasn't lessened. The silence is deafening, and the weight of his actions feels heavier with each passing moment. He replays the events in his mind, over and over, wishing he could take it all back. "Why did I let my frustration get the best of me?" he whispers to himself. But the answer doesn't come. All that remains is regret and the knowledge that his impulsive act has hurt not just himself, but an entire team of people. He begins searching online for news about the restaurant, finding mixed reactions to the manager's public apology. Some commenters are forgiving, others scathing. Each negative remark feels like a dagger to his heart, a reminder of the chaos he caused. In his search, he stumbles upon a blog post about accountability and second chances. One line strikes him deeply: "Owning your mistakes is the first step toward making amends." He realizes that while he can't undo what he's done, he can try to make things right. The next morning, he writes a heartfelt letter to the restaurant's manager. In it, he apologizes sincerely for his actions, acknowledging the damage he caused and expressing his regret. "I let my emotions get the better of me, and I failed to uphold the standards you trusted me to maintain," he writes. "I understand if you can't forgive me, but I want you to know how deeply sorry I am." He also includes a letter for the staff, apologizing to each of them for the impact his actions had on their jobs and the restaurant's reputation. "You didn't deserve to suffer because of my mistake," he writes. "I hope you'll give me the chance to prove that I've learned from this." With trembling hands, he mails the letters, unsure if they'll even be read. But he knows this is a step he needs to take for them, and for himself. Determined to turn his life around, he starts looking for opportunities to rebuild his career. He applies for volunteer work at community kitchens and food drives, hoping to channel his skills into something positive. It's not glamorous, but it's a start. As he works alongside volunteers, he begins to rediscover the joy of serving others. The simple act of helping people reminds him of why he entered the hospitality industry in the first place. Slowly but surely, he starts to regain his confidence. Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, the manager receives the letter. At first, he's hesitant to even open it, but curiosity gets the better of him. As he reads, his anger softens. While the wounds caused by the incident are still fresh, he recognizes the sincerity in the waiter's words. The staff reads their letter as well, and though their feelings are mixed, some begin to wonder if the waiter deserves another chance. After all, everyone makes mistakes, and sometimes it's what you do after the mistake that truly defines you. The seeds of redemption have been planted, but whether they'll grow depends on what happens next. Stay with us, because the waiter's journey toward atonement and the restaurant's road to recovery are about to take an unexpected turn. Weeks pass, and the restaurant begins to see the fruits of its efforts. The staff undergoes rigorous training, the kitchen is revamped with stricter protocols, and the dining area sparkles with a renewed sense of pride. Slowly but surely, Customers begin to return. The atmosphere isn't quite the same, but it's clear that the team is committed to regaining their former glory. One afternoon, the manager sits at his desk, going through a stack of paperwork. Among the documents is the letter from the former waiter. He's read it several times now, and each time, it lingers in his mind. The sincerity, the accountability, it's hard to ignore. He decides to bring it up during a staff meeting. "I received a letter from, you know who," he begins, his tone cautious. He's apologized and seems genuinely remorseful. "What do you all think about giving him a chance to explain himself in person?" The room erupts in a mix of reactions. Some staff members are adamantly against it, their anger still fresh. Others, however, advocate for hearing him out. "People make mistakes," one says. "If he's willing to make amends, shouldn't we at least listen?" After much debate, the team agrees to invite the former waiter for a meeting. The manager sends him a message, and to his surprise, the response is immediate. The waiter is eager, even grateful, for the opportunity to speak face to face. On the day of the meeting, the waiter walks into the restaurant, his nerves evident in the way he fidgets with his hands. The staff gathers in the dining area, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The waiter takes a deep breath before speaking. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he begins, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "What I did was inexcusable, and I've spent every day since thinking about how I let all of you down. I'm not here to make excuses, I'm here to take responsibility." He goes on to share how he's been working at community kitchens, learning about humility and the importance of service. "I've realized that this job isn't just about serving food, it's about serving people, and I lost sight of that. I'm sorry for the harm I caused, and I want to make it right, even if that means starting at the very bottom." The room is silent for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. The manager looks around, gauging the reactions of his team. Some appear moved, while others remain guarded. Finally, one of the senior staff members speaks up. "Actions speak louder than words," she says. "If you really mean what you say, prove it." The manager nods. "We're willing to give you a trial period," he says. "But it won't be easy. You'll start as a dishwasher, and you'll have to earn back our trust step by step. Are you willing to do that?" The waiter's eyes well up with gratitude. "Yes," he says, his voice firm. "Thank you. I won't let you down again." The journey ahead won't be easy for him or the team. But this moment marks the beginning of something new, a chance for redemption, growth, and perhaps forgiveness. Stay tuned, because the final chapter of this story will reveal whether second chances can truly lead to lasting change or if some wounds are too deep to heal. The former waiter's return marks the beginning of a new chapter for both him and the restaurant. Starting as a dishwasher, he works tirelessly, staying late to clean, offering help wherever it's needed, and showing a humility that begins to soften even the most skeptical hearts. Day by day, his actions speak louder than his words ever could. He apologizes individually to staff members, not just with words but by earning their respect through his dedication. Slowly, the icy glares and wary glances turn into nods of acknowledgement and, eventually, camaraderie. The restaurant itself continues its journey of recovery. With the team united and customer trust steadily rebuilding, the dining area once again buzzes with life. Regulars return, drawn by the restaurant's heartfelt apology and transparent efforts to improve. New customers, intrigued by the story of resilience, begin to fill the tables as well. The manager takes a moment to reflect on everything that's happened. He gathers the team one evening after closing time, the former waiter included. "This journey hasn't been easy," he says, his voice filled with emotion. "But it's shown me that mistakes don't define us, how we respond to them does. We've all grown from this, and I couldn't be prouder of the team we've become." The former waiter, now fully reintegrated into the staff, nods with gratitude. "I can't thank you all enough for giving me a second chance," he says. "I've learned that accountability isn't just about saying sorry, it's about proving you're willing to change. And I'll keep proving that every day." The story of the restaurant becomes a tale of resilience and redemption, inspiring others in the industry to prioritize accountability and teamwork. But as we wrap up, here's something important to remember. Second chances don't just happen, they're earned, one step at a time. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you're helping us spread more stories of growth, resilience, and hope. And who knows, the next story might just inspire you to make a positive change in your own life. Thank you for watching. And remember, it's never too late to turn things around. See you in the next video.